So welcome everybody to this Zoom meeting on incorporation. I hope you're going to find it very useful. My name is Prab and I'm co-hosting this with Jiten, who is my accountant. And I started the process of incorporation last year after many years of deliberating and having my head buried in the sand. It wasn't until the end of last year that I finally actually took the plunge and became incorporated, and I've never looked back. So hopefully today we'll be able to give you the information that you need to be able to decide whether it's the right route for yourself, and we will have the opportunity for questions. I'm going to share the screen with you just so that I can share the presentation, and if you do have any questions, please do make a note of them or make a note of them in the chat, and we will address them as soon as the presentation is finished. It shouldn't take too long. It's all quite short. We're hoping to have it all done within half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on the amount of questions that we get. So once again, my name is Prab and I'm a landlord. I've been a landlord for about 15 years. And I, along with many other landlords, was in the predicament with the Section 24 mortgage interest restriction that came in a few years ago. Initially, in the first few years, I sort of just was looking at different options, and I looked at various different companies that no doubt you guys may have already looked at. And it wasn't until the end of last year that I gave Jiten a call, who I'd met a few years earlier. And I suddenly remembered that he was able to do this, and once I got chatting to him, we got on like a house on fire, so to speak. I knew he was the right man for the job, not only in terms of his competency. He's actually a very competent and very experienced accountant, so I knew I was in the right hands in terms of his knowledge and experience, but also more so because of his personality. He's, you know, very rare do you find accountants and solicitors, you know, people of that ilk. Very rarely do you find that they're willing to share their knowledge and experience without charging you by the hour. And he's certainly somebody who's there, committed to landlords and committed to people in general. So that for me meant a lot more than anything else. But combine that with his competency and his ability to be able to help you perform the right actions in terms of incorporation, then you've got a winning formula there. So I'm really pleased that I teamed up with Jiten. And so I actually got incorporated towards the end of last year. And when I incorporated, I sort of spoke to Jiten about this and realized that there's still so many landlords out there who still have not incorporated. So we had a few conversations, a few meetings, and subsequently we teamed up, and now we're both in a position to be able to help other landlords. I'm helping in my capacity, not only as somebody who's a landlord, but as you'll learn shortly in the presentation, there is a process where you can get something called a director's loan, and that's something that I'm part of in providing that service, and that's how myself and Jiten have teamed up. So first question is, should I incorporate? Well, that's the magic question, whether you should or not. You can see here, you know, you've got a loss of mortgage interest relief. Only 20% tax credit is available on net rental income. You're liable to class 2 national insurance contributions if your rental income is more than £6,500 per annum, and also subject to class 4 national insurance contributions from April 2023 if your net rental income before mortgage interest exceeds £9,500. You're also liable to class 4 national insurance contributions if the net income is exceeds 9.5, which I've just mentioned. You've got reduced allowable expenses if you don't incorporate, and you're not able to gift properties without taxes. That's one of the things that people always fall foul of. And as you all know, you are chargeable to inheritance tax on death at 40%. So incorporated landlords, what are the advantages of incorporating? So all of your mortgage interest is relieved at source. So as a private landlord, as you know, you can no longer claim any mortgage interest apart from the tax credit I mentioned. You have a lot more flexibility, which we'll talk about today, in terms of what flexibility is there when you become incorporated. You only pay income tax on wages and dividends that are drawn, as opposed to your whole income. Companies only pay 19% currently corporation tax on profits after wages and costs. Some of you may be aware that is increasing over the coming years to 25% from 1st April 2023. That's for profits in excess of £250,000. There is a tapered relief for profits between 50 and 250,000, and Jiten will explain more about that too. So, and you've got the ability to give shares to your beneficiaries in a tax efficient manner, reducing the inheritance tax burden. Now, this was a key component for me. It wasn't just the fact that I wanted to be able to claim my mortgage interest. That wasn't the only reason. And yes, you know, Jiten is able to help you distinguish whether you indeed even need to, because for some landlords, you may not need to. Incorporation is only applicable if you've got at least 3 properties yourself. So if you've got any less than 3, you cannot incorporate through this process. But even if you've got more than 3, Jiten can work with you to work out, is it actually tax efficient for you to incorporate. And the ability to give shares. I mean, for me, one of my biggest concerns as a landlord with properties in my own name was, upon my death, not only the inheritance tax, but if I have properties that are still in my own name with a mortgage, then obviously those mortgages have to be redeemed. Now, I don't know if my children are going to be in a position to remortgage. So I didn't want that burden, not knowing what will happen, rather than the mortgage companies coming back after my estate to have all the mortgages paid off. So for me, having the ability to create a limited company and then transition my properties from my own private name into the limited company name over a period of time, I loved that flexibility. The other flexibility that I really did like is that I didn't have to suddenly change the legal ownership of my properties, because a lot of my properties are still at very low interest rates. So I wanted to be able to continue that. But now by incorporating, I've got the flexibility that when my existing mortgage term comes to an end with any particular property, as and when I can then start getting new mortgages in a limited company name. And eventually, over the next 5 years or so, maybe 7 years, I'm going to then slowly but surely have each property transition into a limited company. And then once that's done, there's huge tax benefits that we'll speak about too. So what about disadvantages with incorporation? Well, on incorporation, all of your assets and liabilities, with the exception of cash, are transferred into the limited company in exchange for shares. Now, bear in mind, this includes any deposits and equity you paid for when you purchased the property. So if you put in a certain amount of deposit, that will also go in as shares into the limited company, and then you will lose upon incorporation, the share value of that deposit. Now, there is a way that we've been able to deal with this, which we're going to share with you now. See, ordinarily, when you incorporate, let's say you wanted to take out £80,000 in this example, you would take it out as a dividend, and £80,000 as a dividend, between the 7% and the 32% dividend tax, would accrue you a tax bill of £26,000. Now, we're going to share with you how you can actually take out something called a director's loan account, which then means you don't have to. So I had the privilege of doing that. So I had 2 portfolios. I had one portfolio, or still have one portfolio, which is in my own personal name. And I had another portfolio of properties which I had bought with my brother. And together, in the properties that I own in my own personal name, I've taken out an £800,000 director's loan. And the properties that I own with my brother, we've taken out a £1 million director's loan. So what does that actually mean? Very simply, the process of incorporation, from being a person who owns the properties in your sole name to a company, is this. You initially have to form a partnership. Once you've formed a partnership, now if you're somebody who owns the property just in your own name, you can form a partnership with your partner. If you don't have a partner, You can form a partnership with a family member, but the first step is to form a partnership. Once you've formed a partnership, then the next stage after that is to then transition to a limited company. But let's assume, for example, you are now ready to transition into a limited company. And let's assume, for example, you've got £1 million worth of property, for argument's sake. And out of that £1 million worth of property, let's say you've got a 500,000 of mortgages and 500,000 equity. So once you transfer that £1 million worth of property into the limited company, obviously the limited company then takes on the £500,000 of mortgages, but it also then takes on the 500,000 equity as shares. Now, you then lose that equity. You know, ordinarily, if you were going to remortgage in your own name, you could do that. But as a limited company, as you know, it's not the same process. But if as a partnership, you took on a loan, so in the example I've just given, you've got 500,000 equity. Let's say you took on a loan of £500,000. Let's say it was a bridging loan. So today you've got now £500,000 of mortgages, £500,000 of a bridging loan. So tomorrow, when your partnership incorporates, the limited company has taken on £500,000 of mortgages, but it's also taken on £500,000 of a bridging loan. So once you've incorporated, the very next day, you as a director in your personal capacity can repay that loan. So you repay the bridging loan, but the limited company now owes you, as the director who paid off the loan, the limited company owes you that £500,000. That £500,000 is your director's loan account. You can write that off against your future profits. So in this example that we just showed here, where you've got £26,000 of tax, if you've taken out a dividend of 80,000, you would have zero tax to pay. And if you'd taken £500,000 director's loan, you basically will have £500,000 of future profits that you can write off against with any money that you take out. So it's a huge tax benefit to take out. In order to take out that bridging loan, it's just a one-day transaction where you take out that loan. On incorporation, the very next day that loan is paid back. So literally, you do not have to actually physically take out from a bridging company. This is the facility that we are providing in-house. We already have the solicitors set up, so you'll be assigned a solicitor to act for yourself, and you'll have a solicitor acting for the lender, and the lender will give you that bridging loan, and that paper transaction all takes place within the incorporation, and all the paperwork that we need is all there. Just so you are aware, I don't know the exact number. How many incorporations have you actually done, Jiten, so far over the last 5 years?
127.
So Jiten's done 127 incorporations. So this is not something that he's just started doing. This is something that he's been doing over the last 5 years, and it's been refined. All the paperwork that needs to be in place is in place. Every piece of documentation is in place. And, you know, when I did this with Jiten, I sort of wanted to sort of see the whole process for myself, because I knew that if this can work for me, it can work for so many other people. So that's not all. One of the things that Jiten has been able to help me with is retirement planning. You know, we know that when we pass, there's no way we can hide from the taxman. That's just the way it is. As I've just mentioned earlier already, you do have taxable benefits by incorporating, but ultimately when you do pass, there is inheritance tax to pay. But there are ways where you can mitigate that. And there are, you know, there's 40%, as you know, in IHT burden is very high at 40% on any estate with a value in excess of 325,000 for single people, or 650,000 for couples. The other thing that we do provide, or Jiten can provide, is to have something, you know, where you can freeze your current value of shares and gift the growth value to your trust. So this is something that I'm now taking on, where when I pass, the majority of my assets will be owned by a trust. So it will mitigate completely the amount of inheritance tax to be paid. It effectively freezes your portfolio at the current market value. So I'm not fully conversant with this, and Jiten is the accountant here. I'm merely the person who's come on board to work with him in terms of these directors' loan accounts. But if you do put your shares into an exempt trust, it's a very mechanical process. It's, as it says, it's governed by Section 28 of the Inheritance Tax Act 1984, which is superseded by the Section 86. The share value should be agreed at the onset with HMRC, which will stop bitter arguments with the valuation office. And again, Jiten has already had experience with the HMRC on this. Income can still be drawn by directors and dividends can be given, but share capital will need to be divided to different classes. Now, again, some of this may or may not make sense, but there is 100% success rate here. And incidentally, one of the first questions that I asked Jiten when he presented this model to me was this: it's all well and good having a solution to something, but for me, ultimately, the test of any solution is if there's a HMRC inquiry. And Jiten, how many inquiries have you had so far with this new structure?
On incorporations, I've had 39 inquiries, and 38 of them have been completed without so much as a dime being paid to HMRC. I have the one pending inquiry, which seems to be going on and on and on forever, and has dragged on a little bit.
And what's the issue with that one? Why is that dragging on?
Just inept and imbecile inspectors.
So there's no, you don't have any doubt in your mind about whether there's going to be any issue with this. It's the same as all the others that you've dealt with.
No. I mean, HMRC are trying to get clever by asking the same question in a different way, over the last, I mean, for example, and share this with you, the question they asked on September the 1st was the same question they asked me 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things we do realize about a lot of government institutions is there's only people working there that are doing the best they can. But the important thing is that the inquiries that Jiten's had, 38 of the 39, have all been successfully dealt with. Now, that was what was really profound for me, because there's been lots of different solutions provided to me in the past for saving tax, but it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing unless there is a HMRC have looked at that and actually been able to say we're happy with that, and that's what's happened with these. A little bit about Jiten. He's a chartered certified accountant. I think over 1 million years. I think that's probably what it seems like to you. I would imagine. Jiten, author of How to Save Tax, which is available on Amazon now. He's a father, a husband. He loves football. Bless him. And the thing is, one thing I have found is even when I transitioned from my existing accountant to Jiten, it was amazing how many things, nothing even to do with incorporation, because there's a few other companies that I have. And it was amazing how my existing accountant hadn't done certain things, which Jiten has now put right. And again, it's a testament to his knowledge and his expertise. And the fact, I know he sort of talks with just about the HMRC, but he does have an ability to deal with them in a successful manner. And that's why I feel so confident and comfortable with him. So that's it, guys. It was going to be short and sweet. I know there's a lot of information there. And one of the things that we are offering is Jiten is willing to give a 30-minute Zoom with anyone that's considering incorporation to establish whether it is right or not for you. So without you having to spend any money in any fees, that 30-minute consultation with Jiten is worth over £250 of his time normally. So we do have a WhatsApp group as well for the landlords that are incorporated. So you do get an opportunity to be part of that. A lot of valuable questions and answers and wisdom of participation in that WhatsApp group. So if you are interested, please do get in touch. You can email Jiten. So that's Jiten at yourtaxsaver.co.uk, quoting And you've misspelt quoting there, by the way, Jiten, but quoting incorporation promotion, if you can mention that in your email. So that's Jiten, which is Juliet India Tango Echo November at yourtaxsaver.co.uk. So I think now we'd like to sort of open it up to any questions. I'm just going to stop the share and come back to the screen. I know we had a few in the chat already, so why don't we start with that? And I know Yogesh had something at the beginning, so let's start with that. So the first question, Jiten, that Yogesh had was, I'd like to know when I incorporate to change title land register from my personal name to company name, how do I explain to a solicitor that the stamp duty is 0? Would you like to give him an answer to that, please?
Dr. Yogesh, how are you? Right. Firstly, it's something you'll get a land transaction certificate for every property, which you can present to your solicitor, and that will show that the stamp duty has been completed and this property is beneficially owned by the company and there's no further stamp duty to be paid.
Wonderful, nice and simple. That is actually quite a straightforward part of it. He's also asking, do I have to tell all the tenants if that the company is the new landlord and pay rent?
Yes, there'll be new AST for every single tenant. That is a legal requirement, because if you want your rents to go into limited company, you have to inform the tenants, and you have to create a new assured tenancy for the remaining period. So if it's a 12-month AST, which it normally is, and you're already 3 months down the line, then you create an AST for further 9 months in the name of the company.
Wonderful. And his question was, and do I pay rent to the limited company? Yes, you do. All your rents would need to be changed over to being paid to yourself to your limited company, which is obviously quite straightforward. The other question he's asking, Jiten, is when I remortgage, how do I explain to the lender that the rent is paid to the company, but the land registry says the properties are owned personally? Let me see if I can answer this, Jiten. You can test my knowledge. So let me see if I can answer this. So basically, Yogesh, obviously my properties are still in my personal name. Now, I've already got some properties at the end of this year or next year that are coming to the end of their mortgage terms. So what basically happens is when I come to remortgage, the remortgage is happening in the limited company. It has to, because the beneficial ownership is in the limited company. So when I come to remortgage, or if my mortgage term, whether it's because my mortgage term has come to an end or because the product that I had is no longer available, if you come to remortgage, you will be remortgaging in the limited company name. So there's no problem with telling the lender, because you're going to the lender and saying you're remortgaging in the limited company name. Was that the correct answer, Jiten?
Yes.
Ah, there you go. I have learned something. Another question from Yogesh. Oh, he's been very busy, which is great. When I sell a property after incorporating, do I need to fill capital gains form within 28 days? And if so, what do I declare on this form?
You declare the selling price, which is what was agreed, and the incorporation price, which is the value of the property on incorporation.
So basically, Yogesh, this is the whole beauty of this process, is that the incorporation happens at the market value at that time. So if you're incorporating today, you are incorporating at today's market value, which is why all the capital gains is wiped out. So if tomorrow you are then selling the property, you're going to be whatever price you're selling it for minus whatever value the incorporation took place at. So if you incorporated today and you sell tomorrow, there will be no capital gains tax. Is that the right answer again, Jiten?
Yes.
No, I'm doing well. Now, let me just see if there's more.
I think you just had a few more questions.
Ah, here we are. Okay. So when I incorporate, do I need to fill in a capital gains form for each property upon incorporation? Jiten?
No, it's one form which you fill in, but multiple of that form. So you fill in the main form, and there's a 2-page form for each additional property. But that's all part of the incorporation. That's something which I'll fill in.
Okay, yeah, very simple. And the next question he's got, my God, he really has got his encyclopedia out here. Next question is, and thank you, Yogesh, for all these questions, because they'll be benefiting everybody on this call. So thank you.
By the way, Prab, Yogesh was present at the Croydon property meet where you did the presentation as well.
Oh, gosh. Okay, wonderful. So Yogesh, the next question is, after I have incorporated, do HMRC only have 1 year after filing partners? What he says, HIP tax return. Does he mean just?
What happens is, doesn't matter, you can file your return at any time between April to January. From 6th of April to 31st January to file your return anytime. HMRC have up to 28th of February the following year to make an inquiry upon or to raise any questions. So they'll have 1 year and 1 month or 13 months exactly to open an inquiry form. The only time they can ask questions outside that period is if they suspect fraud.
Right. Thank you. Very straightforward. His next question is there a way to avoid 37.5% dividend tax after incorporating? I think we answered that with the director's loan, right?
Yes, director's loan.
So Yogesh, just to clarify again, if you take out a director's loan, and I will say this one more time because I didn't get it first time. So if you've got £1 million worth of property and you've got £500,000 worth of mortgages and you've got 500,000 equity, if you incorporated, your 500,000 of equity would be transferred into shares into the limited company. And yes, if you did withdraw money beyond the 7% tax bracket, you would have to pay the 37.5% dividend tax. The way to avoid that is the day before incorporation, that 500,000 of equity. And by the way, it's up to you whether you use all the 500,000 of equity. You might decide I only need to do 300 or 200. It's your choice. But you've got the ability to take out a director's loan. So day before incorporation, the partnership takes out a loan, a bridging loan. The next day there's incorporation takes place. So the limited company has now inherited £500,000 of mortgage debt and £500,000 of bridging debt. You, in your personal capacity as a director, repay that bridging loan the very next day. And the limited company now has £500,000 of debt owing to you on its books. So you can take that out in one go, or over the next years. You might want to take 25,000 a year for the next 20 years if it's 500,000. That's up to you how you take it out, but it will avoid the 37.5% dividend tax. This was one of the most amazing things that came out of it for me that I wasn't even aware of. So I wanted to incorporate just initially for the mortgage interest and to be able to be more tax efficient from an inheritance tax perspective when I pass on, and didn't want to have my children have to remortgage the property suddenly. But this director's loan was a new thing. It was like a cherry on the cake. And I've effectively got £1.8 million worth of director's loans at the moment. That's going to be, my profits are going to be, I've got a development project, for example, that could be making £1 million profit. And I will be using my director's loan to write that off. Is there a way to pay minor children school fees from company untaxed profits?
Yes, can I answer that? Mr. Prab Paul has a twin brother, Harinder Paul, and we managed to, by giving shares, alphabet shares to the minor children, you can give dividends to that children, which will pay the school fees.
So the school fees effectively become an expense of the limited company, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's very good. I love that. I love that. Now, there is a minimum age, isn't there, Jiten? It's only for children
14.
From the age of 14. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Another question he's asking is, what inquiries has Jiten had for his client around this, and how did he solve them? Very good question.
I had 39 inquiries, Yogesh, of which 38 of them have been resolved. There is one that's pending, and it seems to be needling me because it's we're going through the same routine over and over again for last
what he's
17 months.
Jiten, what he's asking is, what are the inquiries? What inquiries do the HMRC have?
Mainly, one of the main inquiries is it a real partnership or is it fabricated or partnership? And what role do each partners play in the property business? That's one of the questions they ask you. The other question is, do landlords actually spend 20 hours a week on their properties or management of the properties?
Right. And in the so the first question that they've asked, that's quite easy to address, I presume, if you have a partner, for example. Is that quite an easy response?
It is, but sometimes it can be a little bit challenging because, like some of my clients, one partner may be working full time on a full-time job, and the other partner may be doing properties or only properties. So, but the answer to that question is that all the partners are actively involved in the property business, and even though they're working full-time in a daytime job, in evenings and weekends, they all chip in and do all the admin work or do all the or attend to emergency repairs or breakdowns or whatever.
Got you.
I mean, I'll give you an example. I am a full-time accountant. I probably work around 60 to 80 hours a week on my accounting job. I also have 10 buy-to-let properties. And my day-to-day management is done by my son and my wife. But if push comes to shove, then I have to sometimes maybe leave my work a little bit early, or sometimes after work, and go and attend to whatever needs attending to.
No, that's great. Thank you. That's very well explained, Jiten. He's also asking, Paragon allows switch. I think Yogesh is definitely going to get his money's worth today. He's asking, Paragon allows switch from personal to company mortgages.
Yes, they do.
Are there any other?
Not only Paragon, but even Precise do it as well. And Shawbrook, etc. will do it. So that they are not allow you to switch from personal to company mortgage. It's very easy, saves you a lot of legal fees and administration fees, etc. Because they'll use the valuation that they have on hand, and they'll use it that way.
And Kenny, he's also asking to change the deeds from personal name to company name. Can any normal solicitor do this?
Yes. The only thing that needs is a TR1 form or a land registry title form that is required. And in fact, even accountants can do it for you, but I'm not a licensed conveyancer, so I'd rather leave it to the solicitors to do it.
Okay, sorry, I was just grabbing a beer there. Apologies. Right, so that's great. When you move property ownership from personal to a limited company, don't you incur stamp duty as it's a sale? Okay, it's a really easy one to answer. Jiten, do you want to just answer that?
If you're in partnership, as Yogesh, both you and your wife are joint or co-owners on the properties, there is no stamp duty to pay. You get automatic exemption under it's a small section in called Schedule 15 of the Finance Act 2003 Act.
Yeah, that's quite an easy one, Yogesh. That's very straightforward. That's not anything complicated there. Can you explain more a bit about freezer shares upon trust? Do you still retain control so kids don't abuse the assets? Very good question. That was my first question to Jiten when he told me about it. Do you want to answer that, Jiten?
No, because they're in trust, kids will not be able to abuse the assets as such, because they'll be in trust. And trustees, now, as the settler, you'll be the initial trustee for your children. So while you're alive, you'll have full control of it, and then it will be the next trustees who will come on board in place of you. Now, normally, you set out in a trust deed exactly who you want the trustee to be. So if something happens to you, who you want the next trustees to be, and thereafter who the next trustees will be. Because a trust can go up to 125 years. So you need to have at least 3 people young enough to be able to act as trustees. Because by the time it's their turn, they'll be mature enough to do the right thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Jiten. Pritesh is asking, Pritesh Patel is asking, in order to form a limited company, do you not need to be deemed a business? My portfolio is a side investment, but I still maintain a day job. What's the position from HMRC in getting registered as a limited company? I think you answered that, but do you want to just expand on that again, Jiten?
You have to qualify for incorporation relief, you have to have a portfolio of at least minimum of 3 to 4 properties to qualify. Then, and you have to be able to face the Ramsey test, which is able to demonstrate that you're spending 20 hours minimum per week on your property business, and then you get automatic qualification.
Yeah, I think that's just an extension of what you answered earlier. Thank you. Pritesh is also asking, when you say take out a director's loan when withdrawing income, doesn't that imply you'd have to pay it back to the company? No, it's the company that owes you the money, Pritesh, because you took out the loan. So you took out a bridging loan the day before incorporation. In that example that I gave, you had £500,000 of mortgage and you took out a 500,000 bridging loan. The partnership took that out, yeah, the partnership. Then when you incorporate, the company has then taken on both of those debts. So the company has taken on the mortgage debt, the company has taken on the bridging debt. You, in your personal capacity as a director, in your personal capacity, then pay off that bridging loan the very next day. The company now owes you that money because you paid it off on behalf of the company. So the company owes you that money. And as such, that's why you can write that off against profits. Again, Pritesh, if that's still unclear, by all means, take advantage of Jiten's 30-minute consultation, and we can definitely expand on that again. So Tom Anderson's asking, what about mixed partnerships? Are they better than limited company incorporation? I believe he's talking about some of the other solutions that are out there, aren't they? Isn't he? In terms
yes, talking about the hybrid solution.
Hybrid solution, yeah, go for it. Do you want to respond to
Right.
that?
Hybrid solution, Tom, is in fact illegal in the United Kingdom. It was tried and tested in February 2020 in upper tribunal, and unfortunately, the taxpayer lost, and the poor guy has to pay capital gains tax on the whole lot. Now, HMRC are, because of COVID, they held off a little bit, going after every other landlord that's used the hybrid scheme or mixed partnership scheme, but they will be going after them eventually and catch up with every single one. And I believe there were 37,000 at the last count plus who took part in the hybrid or mixed partnership scheme.
Now, Jiten, can you explain why that is? Why is it that they've taken that action against those?
Simple, Stevie. There's something called Section 25, which is transferring of income streams. You can't transfer income streams from yourself to a limited company and transfer the liabilities to the company. What the mixed partnership says or does is that it transfers all the liabilities to the company, including mortgage interest relief, and transfers all the income to you. You can't have that. If it's a partnership, 50-50 partnership, then 50% of your mortgage expenses come down to you and 50% go to the company.
Got it. Yep. And Yogesh is saying again, he didn't understand. He said, will Jiten provide a certificate to give to a solicitor to explain that stamp duty is 0?
Yes, I will. In fact, I'll do a nice love letter.
Oh, brilliant. There you go. Bill Palmer asks, so if I transfer my buy-to-let to a limited company, I don't pay SDLT. Absolutely correct. As long as you do it through the route that we've just discussed, where you would have to form a partnership, and then from a partnership, you would then incorporate. Correct. You would not pay SDLT or capital gains tax, actually, both SDLT and capital gains tax. Tom is asking, I own a property with my wife. It has two parts on one title. One part commercial and one part residential. We are looking to do a title split with me being the freeholder and my wife as the leaseholder on both parts. Is SDLT and CGT applicable in this case?
If it's between husband and wife, there is no CGT on inter-spouse transfer, but there will be stamp duty if there's any mortgage on it.
Can you expand on that? Because I didn't even understand that. There'll be stamp duty on what? At what rate?
The stamp will be at the prevailing rate, depending on how much is outstanding on the mortgage. So let's say you have 100,000 outstanding on a mortgage. Well, first 40,000 will be free, but then I think it's at 3% currently on the remaining. So you end up paying around £3,000 stamp duty.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to try and speed up because I'm conscious of the time. There's so many questions, which is great. Dinesh is asking, is this viable for two properties already owned in joint personal names? I think that's the answer is no, right?
No, you need minimum 3 properties. Absolute minimum 3 properties.
Yogesh has asked something about a partnership return. I'm not sure what he's asking about that, but he just says partnership return there. Let me see his previous. Oh, I see. I think he's talking about that stamp duty issue, which you've answered. Peter Gaskin. Hi, Peter. Which lenders have you found helpful when remortgaging in the limited company? Have they raised any concerns about the director's loan facility? It's a great question, Peter. Jiten?
The only one that hasn't really raised any question is Paragon and Shaw, Brooks and Precise. They're the only lenders that haven't raised any questions. For which are nationwide offshoot mortgages, they did raise an alarm bell, but they actually took out, made the director sign a letter of guarantee saying that he'll not withdraw from the funds of the director's loan for X number of years.
Great question, Peter. Yogesh is asking again, after directors' loans have been spent, then any way to avoid 37? Oh, is there any other way to avoid? I would presume that's a no, right?
No. Once you use the director's loan, if you do need to rely on income from your property, then you will be paying at whatever rate is prevailing at that time.
Okay, and thank you. Sarup Pry is asking, so say I've owned a rental property for 15 years, which has more than doubled in value, but tomorrow I switch to a limited company owned rental property and sell it next week. Is there no capital gains tax, whatever, for the entire 15 years? That's correct, isn't it? If you
yeah, there is no, because all your capital gains are washed out.
It's all washed out.
Incorporation.
I know, Sarup, it's hard to believe, but it's a very simple, straightforward accounting process, and there's nothing. It's not even like it's a loophole. It's a very simple, straightforward accounting process that Jiten does. It's
by the way, Sarup is an accountant.
Oh, is he? Okay. Yes, but obviously they all specialize in different things. But thank you for that, Sarup. It's a great question. Tom's asking again, the properties are unencumbered in my question above. Okay, so then he's not paying anything, is he? Then if they're unencumbered, he's
no, there's no tax to pay.
So just to clarify for Tom, there's not a problem for him to own the freehold and for his wife to have the leasehold. That's what he was basically saying. There's not an issue.
No, there is no.
Okay.
Tom, I have a better idea. Make one company the freeholder and make another company the leaseholder. You're best of all worlds.
Fair enough. Okay. Dinesh is again asking, is there a specified period for the partnership to trade before incorporation? That's a good question.
Minimum 3 years.
Now, there is an exception to that, Jiten, isn't it?
If it's husband and wife, then you can incorporate immediately.
Yeah. So just to clarify, it's 3 years. But if you're like in my case, I mentioned earlier that I had 2 portfolios. One of them were just in my own name. And that particular portfolio, I was able to do the incorporation within the same year. In other words, I think in April 19, I formed a partnership with my wife, and within that same tax year, the incorporation took place. Whereas my other portfolio, which I had with my brother, that was actually, the partnership was formed 3 years earlier. Good question. Bill Palmer is asking, in a case where property portfolio is now mortgage free, is it possible to incorporate transfer to a limited company, and would CGT be payable on transfer? Good question. So he's saying, could you still do the incorporation process even if there's no mortgages? I'm presuming yes, right?
Yes, you can very easily.
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose he had to ask, but yeah, absolutely you can. I mean, the only significance of the mortgage is the fact that you've got debt that is then transferred to the limited company, right? If you don't have debt, then there's no debt transferred. Is that right, Jiten?
Yes. George Riley is in fact in the army, in the armed forces.
Okay, nice. Nice to meet you, George. And George's question is, I am only starting as a landlord with 1 property, but would like to create a partnership with a parent for tax planning, as I'm a 40% taxpayer. And I'm presuming his parents are in the 20% tax bracket. Do I need a deed of trust to transfer a beneficial interest of the property? And if so, will this violate the lender's terms and conditions? Do you understand that question, Jiten?
Yes, I do. But that is quite a common feature, because certain lenders, like the Halifax and Virgin, it will be a violation of the terms and conditions.
Ah, okay.
Most lenders don't care, but those 2 in particular, Virgin and Halifax, do take an exception to the normal. And they don't like it when there's a change, deed of trust or a beneficial interest. There is a way around it, George. We just do a Form 17 and create a partnership with the parent. And it's not official, it's just a beneficial partnership. And that's a way around it.
I tell you, your knowledge is priceless, and you always surprise me. But thank you so much. It's a testament to how much you know, and it's great that you can respond on your feet like this to so many technical questions. So it's really, really, really reassuring. Yogesh is asking, how do you prove 20 hours per week?
Yogesh, I'm sure you visit your properties from time to time to make sure that in one piece. Or more often not, like I do, is mainly because the tenant has dropped their keys in a pub or in a drain or somewhere else, or left them somewhere and have to go and open the door for them. That is counted as 20 hours. And I'm sure you also do things like insurance paperwork, all sorts of times, and lawn mowing on occasions, when your garden can't turn up or doesn't turn up. So there are 1,000,001 things you can do which will qualify for 20 hours a week.
Great. So
managing and reconciling the bank account is counted towards 20 hours because someone has to do it.
Yeah, no, it's very easy, Yogesh, to substantiate that. I've spoken to Jiten about that many times. He's also asking, can it be 1 hour? Can it be 1 hour one partner and 19 hours another partner?
Yes, it can be.
Okay, and is a
that is good enough?
Yeah. And do these things count? Yes. Networking, does networking count?
Networking does not count towards your 20 hours a week, but going to courses or attending webinars like this does count as part of your 20 hours.
Oh, there you go. Well done. Right move research, traveling to a property. He said, yes, that does
Yes.
count.
Time finding contractors, yes. Bookkeeping, yes.
Yeah. Tom saying, oh, there are no mortgages. I think we've addressed that, haven't we, for Tom?
Yes.
Tom saying, you mentioned that one company being freeholder and one company being leaseholder may be better for me. Can I ask why? Our only income is from property and limited company mortgage rates are a lot higher than personal mortgage rates. Good question.
They are there, but it's to protect the asset more than anything else, because once they're in company, you can then gift the assets to other people, other beneficiaries in a more tax efficient way. And by creating a leasehold for one of your leasehold company, is that leases and company, especially when you have commercial property, yeah, you transfer all the tenant repairing to the leaseholder. And so that tenant, leasing companies can pick up the tab for all your repairs and maintenance.
Wonderful. Just checking on the chat that we've answered everything now.
Yeah, Mr. Sarup reminded me that I thought he was an accountant working for KPMG, but he's actually reminded me he was just an actuary.
I think Yogesh did make a point of just mentioning that beer is important. Yes, thank you. I have finished my little bottle of beer now, but thank you for allowing me to have that while we're on the Zoom. I am technically still on holiday, so that's my excuse. I think, can you just bear with me. So let me just one property. I'm a humble actually. That's been answered. Someone said, let's have a 20-hour webinar every week. That's Sarup saying.
That's Sarup. I'm a big follower of Sarup Rupert. He does do everyday Instagram jokes.
So Sarup saying, I have 2 outstanding questions above. Can I just see if I've missed them? So none of this can be done with just one rental property to transfer. Sarup, I think I might have missed it. Do you want to just copy and paste again the 2 questions that you think we've missed before we finish? I think we're coming up towards the end of the hour, but happy to look at those if you want to just post them. Dinesh is saying, great event. Thank you, Dinesh, for coming on. The Yogesh is asking what my contact number is. I'll type it in here. Oops.
It is in the slides, your contact number.
Oh, yes.
As well as your email address.
I'll type it in anyway.
I have your number. I'll talk to. He's part of our WhatsApp group as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I've just put it on the chat, by the way, Yogesh. I've just put my number there. Someone's asking, is there a recording of this? He missed the first 10 minutes. Yes, we are recording it. So please get in touch with the contact details. Let me just put that slide back on, shall I? I'll just put that last slide back on before
second to last.
Yep, that's the one there. So I'd just like to say, take the opportunity. We have come to the end of the hour, which is spot on. Just
one before that, Prab.
Oh, is it the one before that? Okay. Yeah, there we go. Just like to take this opportunity to say thank you for everybody for coming on board the Zoom. Please do get in touch if you found this valuable. Jiten's expertise, as you have seen from the webinar, goes beyond just incorporation. He is very well versed with every area of accounting, which is really reassuring. In my previous experience, I've always found that different accounts have different strengths and weaknesses, and it's really reassuring to be able to go to one accountant, not only for all the landlord needs, but the fact that he's there not only with the incorporation, but also with the inheritance tax planning. It's really great to be able to have everything under one roof. And I will say one thing that was very reassuring for me. I'm not going to mention which other company I was about to use, but I basically was able to do what I needed to for less than half the price. So I was originally quoted £36,000 for the incorporation route. Now remember, it does vary. It's not a fixed price. It does depend on how many properties that you have, and each person's circumstances will be individual. So don't quote me on the figure I'm giving you. I'm just giving you my figure. Was less than halved by going with Jiten, and the 2 points about the
Yeah, I know, I missed the point. Actually, missed the point. I should double my price.
what? Well, so it was, you know, not only for the incorporation but the director's loan facility itself. We only charge 1% for that facility. We didn't mention that earlier, but you will find that out if you do get in touch. You won't find any other company that does it for 1%. The few companies that I'm aware of charge double that, which is where I saved a lot of my money. So you know, if you wanted to take on £500,000 of a director's loan, which is going to give you £500,000 of tax-free income, you'd be paying a small 1% charge for that. So it's a very small price to pay for the facility that it provides. So with that, I'd like to say thank you and hope you have a great rest of the evening and a great weekend, and hopefully we can do some business together. Please get in touch. I'm now going to officially end the Zoom. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.